Greetings to everybody, and we're here today for Ching Conversations for 2026, and we're discussing the book that Eve Smith wrote, Ching Predictions for 2026. So we have now moved on from May's collective energy to the beginning of June. Alice, and with me is my co-host.
I'm Donald with Hidden Path Human Design and excited to get into the conversation today regarding June.
That's great. Is there anything, Donald, you'd like to wrap up for the end of May? And it was a two energy month.
Sure, just a quick review of May. We went from a prevailing energy where things eased up. And it was all about building sincerity and trust with communication with others and being authentic. But nearing the end of May, that would turn to the other gate, which is 34, of great injury, where things got expansive. And then you would eventually start to notice a little bit of resistance towards the end of May. We had to practice speaking from the heart. And then we were also reminded later in May to zoom out because you may be too close to see any problem.
If I recall from great injury, if you try to persist with something and it's not a good time, you may come to a full stop. And sometimes it may show up as a broken bone or something, a fall that actually causes you physically to slow down. And that was the point, slow down and not try to push things through, which of course, as I've said in previous conversations, I just want to push it through and get it done and wrap it up. And that isn't always the best. The timing isn't always good for that. I think earlier when we were talking in April, I'd had a fall. So I'm happy to say I'm recovered. And what I learned from that to just stop and look at my feet. Don't just jump out of bed, swing around and try to do something because you might be lightheaded or you might stumble across something like you left your slippers out the night before and boom, you could go down. I'm learning to navigate in my physical environment and I never paid attention to it like that before. I just got up and rushed out the door. Let's do this, that. How about for you?
Early in May, I found things were a little bit more expansive. I joined a course that's going to help me with my business in the future. That's been fun to play around with, and I've been having more outings, which is great because I felt like a little bit trapped in my house in April. Things have been more expansive, and now I'm just watching for any resistance that comes up. That just tells me that I might be pushing too hard. It's a reminder to relax a little bit and let it be. Or if other people are getting on your nerves, you walk away.
At the end of May, there was a recommendation to find a safe space, create one in your own environment. We talked about it and the importance of grounding, having a reflective practice. Many people journal, and that's something that I enjoy doing, as well as doing grounding both in nature, outside, and also other ways that you could ground yourself. And I know that was important for you. You want to just mention a few of the things that you practice for grounding?
I normally just take some alone time, do a little bit of meditation, and that seems to really help with things like just taking a breath or taking a pause. And I also realized I can be a bit of an emotional eater, so I don't know if that's grounding. I noticed like during my spiritual expansion back in 2022, I had been eating a lot less and I was really out there, ungrounded. I found food was a good helper to bring me back into my body because you still got to have the earth experience.
Anything else before we move into June?
Yeah, I just want to remind the audience how they'll know we're shifting from May to June. It's when you're going to find that you must keep practicing being honest and tactful in conversations around how you see the world. And then this really reminded me of gossiping. You may find people are gossiping, and then it's really easy to get pulled into the gossip. If you get pulled into the gossip, then, everybody's gossiping, and who knows what's true. And are you really being honest or tactful in your conversations?
And the thing with gossip, you got to always ask, is this conversation enlarging me or is it diminishing? Is anybody being diminished in this conversation And frequently the answer might be yes. Are we going to feel enlarged, empowered, or are we going to feel drained, diminished afterwards? And that's to me is such a helpful guideline that I learned from James Hollis, the
Mm-hmm.
famous Jungian psychoanalyst. He's always saying, evaluate everything in your life, every decision you're making from the perspective, will this enlarge you or diminish you? It's a useful guidepost because the point of life is joy,
Mm-hmm.
happiness, to share love, be expansive in the world, and have enthusiasm, be excited, and not to feel diminished, small, and suffering. Eve talks a lot about suffering and releasing things, getting awareness about things that are causing us to suffer. Because when we have that mental attachment to thoughts that create a sense of suffering, when that happens, our emotional states kick off a whole sequence of hormonal responses to whatever it is that we're thinking about. So if we're suffering in fear or anxiety, we are triggering the flood of those stress hormones like cortisol and stuff in our bloodstream. That's the whole thing about change your thought, change your life. I think we've talked about that in earlier conversations. Try to catch the thought and then shift it to something else that you find at least neutral or more uplifting, and just keep thinking about that. And I think that's the value of meditation, and that's the value of journaling, is to let those thoughts go, to acknowledge them, and to say, well, here's what I can do instead of that. And
Mm-hmm.
is that more uplifting? If that feels good, things are working out for me. That's my little mantra. Do you have anything to add about that?
I also went on some walks just by myself. Walks in nature or just getting out, getting on a walk is good too. It could be like serene or meditative as well. Gets you clear. A lot of people abdicate their power to others or feel obligated, like, oh, I have to do this or I have to do that. That creates that stress that you were talking about as well, right? And the stress can build up unknowingly. And then all of a sudden you're in a bad mood. And guess what? You're sharing that badness with everybody around you too.
You're radiating unhappiness.
Yeah.
The fact that we are vibrational energy beings, we don't think about that.
Mhm.
We have energy that goes out, and people, animals sense it. They can sense when we're anxious or whatever. You'll notice they'll get up, they might be sleeping on the floor, and all of a sudden they're alert and they'll come over and sit next to you. They pick up on the energy shifts that we have. It's an amazing world to be in. We don't really prepare ourselves for it. And I think that's part of what the book is about in terms of predictions of the different flows of energy during the different times during the months. And it also relates, I know, with your work in human design, because there's an astrological aspect to it. Whether or not you believe in astrology, it's been studied from the beginnings of time. Like, what is the impact of the positions of the planets, the rotation of the earth, or the seasons that we're in? We're all in different kinds of cycles, and they all have impact on us to help us maneuver the different energy currents that occur at different times of the month or different seasons. That's the whole point of the Ching predictions. We can move into the energy cycles of June. Some of us have already ended the energy cycle of May and have started the first cycle of June, which is sincerity.
Just to go over June's energy or what's upcoming, we're moving from hexagram 61, sincerity, to later in the month in June to small cattle again. So small cattle is also a repeat from March, a second chance to improve those things. And we'll talk about that as we go through. So sincerity invites us to walk the talk using kind words and actions by stripping away the illusions of life. And then midway through June, small cattle appears again, where we're invited once again to take these small steps to refine our response and reaction to conflict. Small cattle is a bunch of things are coming in, and how are you responding to them? Are you overreacting? Are you getting upset? How are they triggering you? I believe that was a word that I came up with for small cattle. There's going to be these triggering things that happen, and how you react is important, right? How you're going to behave about them.
Here's June. That's the chapter chapter we're starting. The page number, it's actually 111. 111. Some people would say there's significance in that combination of numbers if you're into numerology. As I was looking through sincerity, every hexagram has 6 different movements of energy in it. And that's how the hexagram is built. And I start at the bottom because that's how they build the hexagram in the I Ching, starting with the first movement and then ending with the 6th movement. I was looking at the first movement of sincerity, and you had talked about stripping away illusions. The first movement begins with self-trust and clear sight. And I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting. What do you think about self-trust?
It's I guess, the ability to choose your own path in life and feel confident in your choices, knowing that the choices that you're making are not just for your own betterment, but also the betterment for others. This is part of sincerity and also compassion, which was a big theme last year, developing compassion for others, not just fake empathy, which is like you feel sorry for another person, which is very low vibrational because it's not helpful. It's a time to pause and look at where the gossip is in your life, who's gossiping, why are they gossiping? And then another thing I want to add about gossip is gossip comes from the past events. By bringing them back up again in conversation, you're perpetuating them or making them your reality. So if it was a bad experience, then you're going to make that a part of your reality by repeatedly speaking about what had happened with other people.
Good point that you make, Donald. I remember a program I was in, and they talked about exactly that concept of every time you rehash an event, it becomes present. All the emotions of it, all your feelings around that. So rather than being able to release it, if it's an upset, and upgrade your conversation so that you have learned something, then you can say, oh, out of this, I learned that, or I made this, and move on from it and then let it go. You're bringing it back. And that's your reality for that moment, just like you said, with all the emotions, all the upset, everything. And so here you go, the whole cascade of hormones, all of the stress related to it, everything that you didn't like. And usually the ones we're bringing back are the ones we don't like, rather than it's okay to bring back great things and bathe yourself in the wonderful feelings of success. And then you can move on from there. But I think a lot of people don't realize it. And I don't know if you've ever gone out to dinner with somebody or had coffee and conversation, and it's bringing up the same old, over and over, and you want to scream and say, let it go. Being able to detach or let go or release something is something that I think our author Eve covers in the book with the reflection questions, where she'll offer questions that you can look at. What are you holding on to that no longer serves you? Are you willing to let go of that? What would it feel like? What would you like to replace it with? And those are the kinds of help available in this book. What would you add to this?
I was thinking about that exact thing. If you find yourself trapped in a conversation like that, you can use these strategies with the person who keeps bringing or hashing up the past or wants to stay in that energy. You can say, what could have been done differently? Or even if it's a good moment, how can you recreate that moment in a
Right.
new way? So,
Exactly. Or can you identify something that's going on right now that has all the characteristics of that? Let's
mhm.
celebrate that, or let's talk about that. The one caveat I would add is occasionally I've brought up those reflective questions in a conversation and the person's gotten enraged. Part of it is a timing. In the book, Eve talks about listening, trying to be a listener, because sometimes the timing, it's not good to bring up a reflective question. It just upsets the person even more and they get angry. Don't try to manipulate me. I'm angry.
Mhm.
Don't try to make light of this, or they're
Mm.
not open.
Mostly, I think people are looking for validation of their pain. They need someone to validate, yes, this is how I feel in the moment. So if you start moving to a healing place before they've been validated, it could be a disaster. One thing too is if you're always having these conversations with certain people in your life, it's okay to tell them that you're not open to listening because you have to take personal responsibility. If their stories are always putting you in a bad mood, mood and you have to deal with that, it's okay to say no sometimes to going out with them or having that conversation and just be kind about it. You've said this for the past three conversations, you've brought this up. I heard you, but I don't want to continue living in that energy. And if they're not okay with that, then, well, maybe it's time for a break.
And that is a difficult thing to do, is take courage
Yep.
and some practice. You might feel when you first do it, you're fumbling around, or their reaction might be one that's upsetting for you. But
Yeah.
you have to tread softly when you do it. But you always do from a place of love, that you try to center yourself and think of sending love to this person. Obviously, they're in
Mhm.
great pain, upset about this. I'm no expert on this, and I have a tendency sometimes to trigger people in my life, but I think we all do.
Hmm.
That's part of learning to maneuver through life.
Yeah.
I wanted to share something with the first movement of energy, sincerity. The reflection questions I thought were really interesting, where what choices are performative rather than authentic? And in your life, what choices are you making? Performative, I assume that means you think you have to perform in a certain way, or there's a certain expectation, and
Hmm.
you're making choices along that line, versus they're authentic from you, things that you desire, that you've thought about, that you want to do. What do you think about that question, Donald?
As someone who's lived through the expectations of others, like always meeting other people at their expectations, this one's a very big one for me and part of a life transition, as well as to being more authentic and actually figuring out what I want as well in life. So it's not always about other people's expectations. One thing I like to tell people specific to expectations is you have to set the expectations with others. Otherwise, you just let their fantastical dream of what you're going to do for them or who you're going to be for them rule in the relationship. So you got to temper that with a little bit of, well, yeah, I'm coming out to dinner with you, but no, we're not going to talk about whatever that painful event is the whole time. We're also going to talk about these other things.
That's great. And in a way, that reminds me of what Eve talks about, or we've talked about, setting boundaries. You're learning what kind of boundaries are good for you, which I think helps set up the understanding of what's authentic for you. You have needs, they're reasonable usually,
Yeah.
and you're putting them out there and setting a boundary for having them in your life, and how you're going to engage with others, and
Hmm.
how you hope that others will engage with you in a helpful and meaningful way. I wanted to talk about the next
Hmm.
reflection question under the authentic strength, movement one, and that is, what in your life feels misaligned? And that's a big one for everybody, because there's all kinds of stuff and it's causing suffering. How do we get to the point of releasing some of these things we're suffering about? So if we're out of alignment, that's a big work. Actually, it can be a life work. And I know in Jungian psychology, they talk about there's the self, which is your higher self, and then there's the other self, which we think of more the ego. And the whole idea is that you get into alignment, the
Hmm.
self with the self, so that you feel whole and complete. And to do that, there are areas of suffering in your life that you need to release. They might be past events, they might be misconstrued conversations. There are all kinds of things that you might be suffering about that are creations in your own mind. What do you think about that particular reflective question?
And this goes back to the first movement about seeing the world as it is or as you think it is. Sometimes what you think is not the reality of the situation, so you got to work that out first. Are you being delusional with what your reality is? Like a lot of people think life is happening to them, and then there's the other camp where you think life is happening for you. We live in this duality. It's more of like a play space rather than a place to have more suffering.
Of that play space,
Yeah.
to think of your world and your reality as a
Yeah.
play space.
Yeah.
That's a very, for me, uplifting thought. And
Yeah.
I can envision it In my mind's eye as a play space, that's something I want to hold on to.
I don't think we play because there's a seriousness that comes with events that happen. We judge them that they're happening to us, and we forget that they're also happening for us. Those two truths can actually be held at the same time, which is what I like to do. So this thing's happening to you, but it's also happening for you in some way. For example, you may have fallen and hurt yourself, but then you get a scan at the hospital and it reveals something that you would have never known, like a tumor or something that you actually catch early enough to deal with. Don't be too quick to judge whatever is happening to you.
I'll read the other questions. If there's something you want to pop in and talk about, the next question, we're on movement one. What I love is these particular questions are, I would call meaty, something to really spend some time investigating and to write notes in your books so you can go back and see what was I thinking on this date for this chapter. So where in your life do you feel strongest, most alive, vibrant, when you simply show up as yourself? And in parentheses, this as a centering point in the parentheses. What would you say?
I haven't answered these questions yet, but where in my life do I feel the strongest? I think it's in my compassion or like having a heart for others. Just having heart and caring for others. That's where I feel strongest. But it's also a double-edged sword because not everybody loves at the same level or has the same understanding of caring and love as you would. So then you can get yourself into situations where you're giving to somebody who can't give back to you in the same way. And you have to be okay with that at some level.
I was thinking about that. And one thing I've noticed about getting older, and I don't know if those of you who are watching who are also in your senior years, if you've noticed this too, but I find that the way I used to operate and think, I've shed that. Now I feel a great love and a great energy, and I feel comfortable sharing that. For example, with my book club, the people I love, I send out love at the meeting from my heart. It's hard to explain. It sounds hokey, but when I ask questions, I hold them in this cloud of compassion and interest and curiosity. And whatever they're going to express is going to be good, exciting. I find that I love being with my plants, and that's okay. I don't have to make any excuses for wanting to garden or be out with the plants or out in the world. So I guess that's how I interpret my authentic self. And for a long time, I think when I was working, I actually knew that I was not my authentic self. There were moments I had to carve out outside the workplace, but I knew when I went to work, I wore a costume and I was okay with that. I was a certain persona there in the workplace, and that's what I had to do in order to have the program delivered with the integrity that it needed to be done on behalf of the children. This was in a children's hospital. There were things that had to be done. They had to be done right. They had to be done on time. And so whatever I needed to do, however I needed to be to get that handled, was how I was going to be. What do you think?
When you were talking about that, it also brings you back to the first question about being performative versus authentic. I feel if you work for a company, there are expectations of how you're supposed to behave, how you're supposed to show up, and you have to almost suppress parts of yourself to fit into that box. I think one of the major changes we're going to have to deal with going forward is how do we allow the individual person to show up at work and still feel like their individual self? We got to make room for them within the workplace now because people are
Yeah.
becoming more individual.
It's really a double-edged sword because the point of the business is to do the business, sell the product, provide the service. And that's an alignment as an employee you need to take on. So if you're always showing up late, how is that helping if you're providing service? If you look in social media right now, a lot of people are complaining about things. Why can't I show up late? Or I want to do this or that. But there's a balance.
I know what you're saying, Alice. With the performative and just doing work for money, that's a very dead way of looking at it. And what I was going for is the more authentic way is what if the workplace was making products with love behind them? I find a lot of places are, how can we make this cheaper? How can we make this more effective? And they almost take the humanity out of the process. When you're working for a place like that, you start to feel dead inside. But if you add the joy and the love of work back into the process, I think people do show up on time. They know everybody's backing the good product or service.
There's a way to make it work. Like you're saying, that's one of our challenges going
Mhm.
forward. And I know we'll figure it out. And let's see, where are your words not aligned with your heart? And I thought, wow, that's going to take a moment of reflection. I didn't have anything come immediately to mind. How about for you?
For a number of years, I've been speaking from my heart, but I know moments in the past where I wasn't speaking from my heart. When you're talking about speaking from your heart, things happen in life. And if you carry them in your heart space, it creates a blockage to actually hearing what your heart wants to say. This is where, if you find you're not speaking from your heart a lot, maybe there's some inner heart work you can do.
I think it would be helpful if we could come up with an example for folks about speaking from your heart. What would that look like?
It all ties back into being performative or being authentic. If you're being performative, that's more of a fake position in life, and you're just doing things to show up in a certain way so that everything is comfortable. And I love this whole idea of comfort because we love our creature comforts. Everybody just wants to be comfortable and they want to have an easy life, but you can get too comfortable. One of the things with life is it's always changing. So you almost need to get comfortable with the change. You can't get comfortable and stuck in the stagnation because life is always going to change. You're going to get older, family's going to change, friends in your life are going to change.
That's great that you bring up the point of change because the I Ching has also been known through centuries as the book of change or the book of
Mhm.
changes. That's what reality is. The world, everything changes all the time. And how do we adapt or how do we move through the changes which come as these energy elements
Mhm.
around us, the collective energy? How can we change or accept it as opposed to try to resist it because it's going to happen and you can choose to suffer and hang on to things. But if the world's changing, you either have to get with the program or you're going to be in a world of hurt. Do you agree with that?
For sure, because your mind will try to hang on to things that feel comfortable. But if those things are no longer available, or the structures that support those things are no longer available, then your mind's hanging on to something that's in a chaos or a change state. And that can cause a lot of anxiety, nervousness, and fear around whatever's going on. And that's suffering.
And also, it's a state of being where you don't make good decisions. When you reflect, oh, shouldn't have done that, or that was the wrong thing. If you really look at it, you were in a state where you were not balanced or centered. How about we move on? There's six different energy movements. And the last one, number six, is always considered the warning. So let's
Mhm.
see what the sixth energy for clarity
It's
is.
a big one. It's the insincere will fall. It's
Okay.
all about those who are not acting with sincerity, are posturing or pretending or manipulating will fail due to just natural law, right? Because I believe one thing that's happening with social media and all this new information that's available to more people is people are starting to sharpen their discernment and really see the truth of what's going on in the world. So if you're not acting sincere, more people are going to see that going forward. One thing I always told my kids is that when you lie, you have to remember the lie. So I told them not to lie because you have to remember what you lied about. And I said, it's better just to be open and honest because that's just what happened. This all has to do with sincerity as well. If you're just open and honest with what happened, then you don't have to remember some false truth or cover the truth or remember who you told that to. If you want to lie, you might as well start getting a spreadsheet out and all that.
Sometimes that takes a lot of courage. If there are a lot of people around you saying no, to come forward and say, yes, this is what is true and what needs to be done or needs to be said.
Yeah.
And it may cost you in some situations your job. That's a very difficult position to be in because you look over your shoulder and if you are your sole support of your household, you have children, you have a mortgage, you have parents to take care of, things like that. It's a very difficult position, and we're not downplaying the seriousness of some of the choices that we make in life. But somehow you have to work out how to be authentic, because in the long run, if you make a false position, you will live with that. You'll always be reflecting on it. You'll always think, why did I do that? People go into therapy over having to make choices like that. The second energy, how will we know what the second energy is?
The second energy is small cattle, and the movements start with small cattle maintaining integrity. Our
Just talking
behavior.
about that.
This is more about acting out what you've learned. We've already been through this energy once. Now it's about refining or getting better at being in integrity, acting from truth over the illusion, like after the illusion is stripped away. So you may find out the truth of something. Another interesting thing about small cattle, if you look at it as a whole, it's all about the illusion may be stripped away, and how do you deal with the truth of the situation once you know what that is? Do you act all puffed up about it and use it to your advantage? Or do you have compassion? Do you remain sincere? Do you forgive? Small cattle is all about going over this again. How are we going to behave once we know what the truth is? How are we going to move? I think we learned also about taking small steps towards being better in
Yeah.
general.
And that seems to be the theme so far this year. It's small,
Mhm.
incremental steps rather than bold, because of the energy currents. They seem to be changing. And when you have great injuries show up and things like that, it's good to be not taking on humongous projects and
Mhm.
trying to push things through. So, is there a warning for small cattle?
It's the hidden danger of relief. You may feel relieved after the tension, and it creates choices that are too good to be true. So don't blindly rush ahead with anything that seems too good to be true. Like you get that letter in the mail saying, "You've won $1 million. You just have to give us your bank account information." Too good to be.
Right. So, what are the closing thoughts for June that we should consider?
Closing thoughts for June. Sincerity is going to be a big theme in June, and also how we move through the world. One of the movements that I really liked with small cattle, which is going to be nearing the end of June, is anchored in values, which is becoming who you wish to be. So, how do you want to show up in the world? And it really puts the responsibility on yourself to how you're going to show up.
That's so interesting, because when we think back to the first energy that we're dealing with, sincerity, that first reflective question was authentic versus performative. It's like a whole theme that's preparing us
Mhm.
for dealing with what's coming the rest of the year. Eve has talked about how things build. You're learning skills each month as you go through the year to be successful and then be prepared for the next year. I
Mhm.
can see this whole authenticity theme and small steps theme starting to run through all of the chapters to date. June will be halfway for us on the calendar year. Anything else?
On a collective level, you may hear truths come out, and you'll be able to see who's being truthful and who's not being truthful. And when that happens, it may trigger something inside of yourself to take action. Then you have to choose, is taking action on this in my best interest or not? The stuff may come from outside out of you as well. You may hear things, rumors of things, and then it's how you wish to become in that moment. Are you going to be overreactive? Are you going to pick up your pitchfork? I feel like June, something's going to come out.
This is about the collective energy around us,
Mhm.
not just
Yeah.
personal. I
Yeah.
mean, you can't help but make it personal, but it's how are you going to maneuver? How are you going to be successful? How are you going to stay authentic and self expressed and hold your own truths as the energy currents? And the world around you is reacting to the energy too. When you see this, it's not just you as an individual. So, how will we know that the energy is shifting to July?
We'll know when persistence and gentle clarity take over, clearing away the fear and the doubt until progress in life feels easier. So I think things are going to start to ease up in transition from June to July. We've been under a lot of pressure, tiny cracks, and watching for this and watching for that, and really learning to navigate all the chaos going on and still remain in integrity, honesty, and in sincerity.
What will we be moving into in July?
We're going to move into wind and the army, hexagram 57 and hexagram 7.
I know that Eve is doing mini courses on each chapter. I invite you to check out the course she's done for June on this channel. They'll be posting every month, so stay tuned for those. If you're interested in getting the I Ching predictions for 2026, it's not too late. We'd love to have you join us, and you can purchase it through Amazon. Link down in the description. Follow along with us, read the chapters, use the book for a personal journal to answer the reflective questions, because the true power in this for yourself will become thinking about some of those reflective questions and just writing your thoughts down, and then seeing every month, looking back if you want, where was I thinking back in January? How am I thinking now? What's shifted? What's the perspective? It gives you another way to think about what's happening around you and how you're being in the world. Are you happy with it or not? Is there something you can shift or not? What would you add, Donald, from the human design perspective?
From a human design perspective, it's all about developing trust in yourself through knowing yourself. Human design is a great way to validate what's been going on in your life and see areas that you could potentially improve upon or learn to navigate in a more strategic way. It gives you
So,
strategy and authority, for example, for making decisions.
and for those of you who don't know, Donald has a Substack channel, and he discusses human design and its applications in life. Link below for his Substack channel. And Eve also has a Substack channel, and she publishes both reflections on the I Ching, and she also does channeling about the I Ching. And some of the channeling has been very helpful because she does it from a healing perspective. So, what kinds of advice or what guidance to help us deal with fear that may come up, or upset, or things like that when we're viewing the world going on around us, collective energy challenges that are coming up every month. Her Substack channel is also listed below. Join Donald and Eve on their Substack channels and consider buying the book. And by all means, please join us monthly for our I Ching conversations. If you have any thoughts or things you want to share, please put them in the comments below. We can all benefit from your insights and experience. We will be seeing you again the end of June for our next round of I Ching discussions for July 2026. And until then, be safe, take care, and love your authentic self.
Bye.
Bye bye.